Escalation, Northwest 17.
Okay, that's all copied.
The threat of forest fire is a fact of life for anyone who lives in or near a forested area. This was especially true for 1998 in Alberta. An unusually dry winter with little snow accumulation and an exceptionally dry and warm spring brought about extreme burning conditions throughout the province. Dealing with wildfires in the Forest Protection Area is the responsibility of Alberta Environment, Land and Forest Service. During the fire season, ground and aerial patrols and fire lookout towers are on the alert for forest fires. As well, a lightning detection system strategically placed across the province records lightning strikes and their locations. These locations are processed and transmitted to a display terminal in each fire center. By the middle of April, Alberta Environment had already assisted a number of municipal districts and counties in suppressing grass fires threatening their communities. The fire hazard was building across the province. By the end of April, 5 air tanker groups and 6 RAP attack units were brought on early to assist the initial attack forces already deployed throughout the forested area. On May 2nd, a forest officer and a RAP attack unit followed a lightning storm north of Fox Creek and immediately assessed a series of 5 fire starts. These later joined together and became the Virginia Hills Fire of 1998. As with all wildfires, Alberta Environment deployed initial attack forces as soon as the fires were detected. On the same day, another large fire started at Mitsu Lake, caused by a tree falling on a power line. The following day, there were 20 new fire starts across the province, putting at risk numerous communities, acreages, oil and gas facilities, and timber resources. At the same time, municipal districts and counties outside the protection area were also endangered by wildfires and requested assistance from Alberta Environment. Alberta has available a large number of firefighters to draw from. However, due to the number and severity of fires burning across the province and the values at risk, it was apparent many more firefighters and resources would be needed. The following day, on May 3rd, the decision to go out of province for assistance was made. CIFC, the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Center located in Winnipeg, Manitoba, was contacted, and the request for additional personnel and resources was made. Within 24 hours, resources from across Canada and areas of the United States were mobilized and en route to Alberta. The morning of May 4th revealed that 36 more fires had occurred overnight. Both personnel and resources were stretched to meet all the demands. The weather forecast for the day didn't bring good news. The temperature rose to the high 20s, and the relative humidity dropped to the mid-20s, creating what fire managers call a temperature RH crossover, where extreme fire behavior is expected. Late in the evening of May 4th, strong winds out of the west, gusting between 60 and 80 kilometers per hour, pushed the Virginia Hills Fire 58 kilometers eastward toward the town of Swan Hills. At 2:20 the next morning, Swan Hills was declared to be in a state of emergency, and evacuation notice was given. Alberta Environment kept the media informed constantly, and an emergency public warning system had been set up using radio and television broadcasts to alert people of the situation. At the same time, Alberta Environment announced a province-wide fire ban. Some people think that putting out a forest fire is a simple matter of going in with air tankers and dropping tons of water. The bombers actually carry fire retardant, which is much more effective than water. But this won't put a fire out. It only slows a fire's advance, buying time for the ground units. The work of the firefighters on the front line is staggering. They can work up to 16 hours a day in conditions that often resemble a blast furnace. A major forest fire can release the same energy as a nuclear explosion. For any wildfire scenario, there is one fire boss and an associated fire management team. Because of its size and values at risk, the Virginia Hills Fire was divided into 3 zones. Each zone fire boss reported directly to the fire management team. At the Fire Command Center in Whitecourt, the fire management team planned the strategy and tactics for the overall suppression activities on the fire.
This is the operational section, I guess, in the meeting room that the O team uses, and that's made up of 5 individuals: the fire boss, who's in charge of the overall organization, the line boss, who is in charge of the operations part of the fire, the logistics boss, who's in charge of all the services. So making sure that all the resources are in place to run the operation. And then there's the plan section, which is to provide information and keep track of information.
4 main camps were set up in safe zones. Fire management teams made up prior to the fire season swung into action, organizing equipment and facilities. In essence, the logistics were similar to setting up a small town in the middle of the bush overnight.
We're servicing quite a few people, over 1,000 people out of this camp, 1,500 probably. And so we need water. There's no good water supplies up here. And we've been getting bottled water shipped into us from Whitecourt.
Communities from Edmonton to High Prairie did all they could to assist in helping the firefighters. Grocery stores kept stocks at their maximum, and catering companies worked around the clock.
This is terrible to see, and to get a view from the air and to see, particularly in the Swan Hills area, how difficult it must be to fight this kind of fire, because basically you aren't fighting one blaze, you're fighting a series of fires.
On May 7th, the evacuation of the town of Swan Hills was lifted, and the residents returned to their homes. Elsewhere in the province, the forest fire situation continued to worsen. The Tolko Mill at High Prairie was threatened, and only extreme efforts saved the mill with only minor damage. However, several log decks were consumed by the fire. A small fire caused the evacuation of a few homes by Sucker Creek Indian Reserve. On the Mitsu Lake fire, overnight winds doubled the fire size to 36,000 hectares, pushing it back towards Slave Lake and forcing the town to be put on a 2-hour evacuation alert. Acreages along Highway 2 and the Mitsu Lake Industrial Park were evacuated. As of May 11th, the Virginia Hills Fire had grown to 144,000 hectares. 620 firefighters, 42 helicopters, 110 bulldozers, 31 water tankers, 2 air tanker groups, and 2 helitorch teams were involved. Another 350 firefighters were en route from out of province. Alberta Environment and the Department of National Defense announced that specialized military transportation would be provided to the Virginia Hills Fire, starting the following day. The military vehicles were needed because they could transport large numbers of firefighters in the rough terrain. Firefighters were moved from the base camps out to the fire line in the morning and returned to the camps after fire suppression was concluded for the day. Local industries also stepped up to bat, supplying personnel carriers, bulldozers, resources, and personnel. Another concern was containing the fire near TransAlta power lines. Without successful protection, the entire northwest part of the province could have been without power. In addition to the dangers created by the fire itself, there was a heavy flow of traffic in the area, much of it large trucks and heavy equipment. For the safety of all concerned, access to the Virginia Hills area was restricted to authorized personnel only.
A lot of people were coming into the warehouse looking for employment. A lot of people, media people were coming in with cameras. A lot of people from the community were coming in with cameras, taking photographs of helicopters, and it became a real safety and security issue at that time. We were asked to set up checkpoints along the main road coming into the warehouse. We had one park ranger at each end. What they did was talk to the individuals in the vehicles that were coming in, asking them what their business was. If they were doing anything relating to the fire, they were allowed access.
Alberta Environment realized getting information out to the public was crucial. Media centers were set up throughout the province, and updated reports were provided twice a day.
75 firefighters and several bulldozers are battling the blaze from the ground.
20 new fires have started over the past 24 hours. Forests are tinder dry and burning up.
Alberta Environment provided the media with information tours of the fires on a daily basis, and regular public briefings were held for both update and safety awareness purposes. On May 13th, a blow-up occurred on the northeast corner of the Virginia Hills fire. Once again, Swan Hills was threatened and had to be evacuated. As they had done just days before, the residents took it in their stride, carrying only their necessities and hoping for the best. 2 days later, they were able to return, this time for good. The proximity of the fires to urban areas was, and is, a major concern of Alberta Environment. Besides Swan Hills, Whitecourt, and Slave Lake, many other centers were threatened. The encroachment of communities on forested areas makes the threat of wildfire a fact that can't be ignored. Alberta Environment works with municipal districts, counties, town officials, industry, and other stakeholders to produce wildland-urban interface plans. Part of the plans involves putting together a fire history of the area, forest fuel management, emergency response routes, structural design, and recommendations for interagency cooperation and cross-training. Providing the public with information is extremely important. Homeowners, developers, and government officials, as well as industries that work in forest areas, are taught how to protect their communities and resources, and what to do if a fire does threaten the area. On May 17th, the Virginia Hills fire was listed as being held. The perimeter around the fire was 1,600 kilometers, more than the distance from Edmonton to Vancouver. The logistics involved in handling the volume of firefighters, aircraft, and heavy equipment reached levels never before experienced in Alberta. The battle of fighting forest fires continued throughout the summer, as it did in other parts of North America. On August 4th, there were 44,000 lightning strikes in the province, which, over the next 3 weeks, caused an excess of 300 new forest fires. By late September, the fires began to abate. Over 700,000 hectares had been burned across Alberta. Yet, as dangerous and devastating as they are, forest fires are not necessarily disasters. Fire is nature's way of eliminating dead and decaying growth, encouraging the creation of new vegetation, and providing new habitat for wildlife. The Virginia Hills fire was one of the most threatening forest fires in Alberta's recorded history. A product of a number of separate fires that merged together, the Virginia Hills fire ultimately required the efforts of 1,000 firefighters and 1,000 support staff. A total of 163,000 hectares was consumed, and the fire had a direct or indirect impact on 7,400 square kilometers of land. Virginia Hills will recover from this episode, as it has many times before. But the forest fires of 1998 will never be forgotten. nor will the tireless efforts of those who succeeded in suppressing those fires. Firefighters from across Canada and the United States, Albertans, industry, and the staff of Alberta Environment.